All right. And we are going to jump right in, and we've asked Nicole Kramer from Michigan Department of Education to kind of give us a brief overview of MiPHY, maybe what resources are available, that sort of thing. And then we hope that if you have any questions, please ask her, and she'll do her best to answer, I'm sure. So Nicole?
Yeah, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information about the MiPHY, and then please ask any questions you have, and that'll kind of help better cater the information to what you need today. So the MiPHY survey has been around since 2013 or so, and it is an every other year survey that is given to 7th, 9th, and 11th graders. So it is a completely voluntary survey. So districts and buildings choose to participate. Students have the opportunity to opt themselves out on survey day, and parents and caregivers also have the option to opt their students out. So kind of at multiple layers, it is voluntary. It's basically a service MDE provides. So we have the system that allows you to participate in the survey online. We provide the reports, and then everybody kind of does with it what they will. So we don't have a lot of resources at MDE that allow us to really provide a lot more than that, but that's where you'll see a lot of the local areas doing a really great job in providing support and coming up with really great resources around MiPHY. So sometimes I say I'm not always the expert in those areas because we at MDE don't do as much of that. But the MiPHY is an every other year survey on what we call the even years. So this coming school year, 23-24, is a MiPHY year. And the survey cycle runs just about an entire school year. We typically open after Labor Day and then close early June. So that allows buildings and districts to have the entire school year to plan wherever in there works best for them. So there aren't any restrictions on when you can survey as long as it's within that large window. All schools in Michigan are eligible, so it doesn't matter. You can be a private school, a public school academy. Basically, if your school has a school code, then you're eligible to survey. That means that our system can say, yes, you're a real building, and it can access the system where you have that school code, and you're allowed to survey. As long as your building has a 7th, 9th, or 11th grade. If you don't have a 7th, 9th, or 11th grade, then you're not going to be eligible to participate in the MiPHY. Everything's done online through the Michigan School Health Survey System. So we actually have 3 surveys that are available there. MiPHY is by far the most used survey. MiPHY is the Michigan Profile for Healthy Youth. We also have a bully-free school survey, as well as a Michigan School Climate Assessment Instrument. So those are the 2 extra surveys that we have there. Those run every school year. The MiPHY, again, is every other year. The reason we do MiPHY every other year is to not compete with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. So I mentioned in my intro that I also coordinate the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is done through the CDC. It is a risk behavior survey. So it provides us our state level risk behavior data. And then MiPHY was created off of the YRBS. When we were doing YRBS at the state level, everybody said, okay, but we want local level. So we created MiPHY. We took the YRBS, put it onto MiPHY, added some risk and behavior factor questions as well. And that's what MiPHY is, YRBS plus risk and behavior factor questions. So the MiPHY has 2 versions, the MiPHY and the MiPHY Basic. The MiPHY is everything, all the topics. The MiPHY Basic excludes sexual behavior and depression and suicide. So those 2 sections are excluded from the MiPHY Basic. When we were first going around the state telling everybody about the MiPHY, we had some groups in some areas of the state were like, we want this information, but those 2 sections would make it impossible for us to participate. And we didn't want that to happen. We wanted everybody to be able to participate. So we created those 2 versions, and that decision is a local decision. So that decision can be made at the district or the building, however it works in that district, and they can decide whether they participate in the MiPHY Basic. We also have separate surveys for middle school and high school. So those questions differ for the 7th graders than they do for the 9th and 11th graders. I was asked to talk a little bit about participation. So participation in the MiPHY, it's hard to talk about whether it's gone up and down because we've had COVID, right? So it's definitely gone down in the last couple years, but it's also going back up. So in the 2018 cycle year, so that would have been our cycle year before COVID, we had 775 registrations for the survey. In 20, we had 506, but in 2022, we had 616. So it feels for us at MDE like MiPHY is really struggling, and because we're hearing so much about a lot of the negativity around not only MiPHY, but this type of surveying in general, because it's being talked about a lot. But especially when I remind myself and I look back at those numbers, I said, 616 is really not that off, considering everything got so out of our regular schedule because of COVID. So I think there's a lot more positivity in surveying than I tend to feel on, when I'm hearing all these negative things. To give your perspective though, too, is there also is a lot less participation in the youth risk behavior survey than we're used to. So I think in general, there is definitely kind of a culture of a little bit more scrutiny around these types of surveying, these health risk behavior surveys. But I also think there are a lot of districts that are still very supportive and want to still participate and understand the importance of this information. And I think it's just going to take a little bit of time for them to get back up to being able to participate. And I was asked also to talk about what kind of information comes from MDE as far as MiPHY goes. So that is all dependent on if I have permission from a local level superintendent. So we, again, really want to make sure that MiPHY is a service that MDE provides and not necessarily uses. So all of the data that these districts and buildings have is only those that have the local level superintendent approval can view that data. So in our system, that superintendent is allowed to sign off on anyone that has access to the system, has to have that sign off from the superintendent, and they then have discretion as to who they choose to give the data access to. So there are different levels, and one is data access, so they can decide who gets access to the data. We also don't share participation information. So I often get phone calls saying, hey, can you let me know who's participating in this area? And I can't and don't do that unless I have superintendent approval. So if a superintendent, emails me and says, hey, we're working with this person or this group, please share this information with them, then I will. But if I don't have that permission, then we don't share. I just threw a lot at you really fast. Are there any questions so far? I saw something in the chat, I think.
Hi, Nicole, it's Barry.
Hi.
Also Michigan School Health Coordinators Association as well. So we've talked to you many of times. One of the things, is it feasible to get who did the survey as far as the schools, so we can use it as a benchmark. So as an example, my community, I don't know Saginaw. I don't know who's done it in Saginaw in the past and who is doing it. Because I know I have some call me already saying, hey, what do I need to do to get this done?
Yep.
I know what needs to get done. I know that aspect of it, but is there a way to find out in my areas who's done it? So I kind of use that as my benchmark. Is that feasible?
So you as a school health coordinator can request ISD level access.
Okay.
And that will allow you to see participation information. It does require signature from the local level superintendents.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Or if I have permission from those superintendents, I can give you that information.
Okay.
So, as long as I'm being told I can talk to you about that information,
Right.
then absolutely I can share it with you.
Okay.
Yep. And if
Thank
you
you.
want that level of access, just send me an email and I'll let you know what you need to do to get the access.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nicole, I have a question. This is Lisa Horvath from the Guidance Center. Do the schools receive anything from MDE, like encouraging the MiPHY, or how to do the MiPHY without them actually reaching out to you?
So they typically get something that lets them know that the survey is, that it's a survey year. You know, it's an informational memo that goes out in the memos that they get that lets from MDE that lets them know that it's a survey year, lets them know what it is, lets them know that it's available, but we don't necessarily do a lot of encouragement on using it. It's kind of, again, if you want to, here it is, but we don't necessarily do a lot of work to push the survey. It's more informational. A lot of that work is done at the local level, but we do provide information. So we let them know it's available. I do trainings. So I do, typically during a survey cycle, I like to do 1 or twice a month. I like to do, you know, informal trainings where I tell everybody how to do it and then they get to ask questions. But that's about it.
Okay, thank you. So can I follow up then? We do reach out to all of the schools that we work with, from superintendent to principal or whoever our contacts are in the schools, with letters and phone calls, and please do this, and we will help you proctor and provide staff, and whatever we can do, we are strongly encouraging that. When we do that, are we able then to say, you may contact Nicole Kramer at this number and she will provide trainings for you if you have any questions? Okay.
Please
awesome.
do, absolutely. And I can set up trainings just for a certain group, just for a certain district. Absolutely. Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Rachel, why don't you go ahead and unmute with your question, followed by Aaron?
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Nicole, I just had a quick follow-up question to when you're talking about superintendents providing access. Did you mean superintendents per school to give the release for the specific school, or could say the superintendent of the whole RESD provide that release to give us information for all the schools in that RESD?
No, it's by district.
Okay, all right, thank you. That was just a quick clarification I had.
Yep.
I had posted a question in the chat. Nicole, I was just curious, who is the informational email actually sent to when you send those out?
It goes out in what we call a Thursday communication. There is a communication that goes out to school districts from MDE. It's an email, and it's a memo that goes out in that system.
So potentially like it goes to teachers and it doesn't just go to like high level.
I don't believe it goes to teachers.
Okay.
I believe it goes to administration. I can't say for certain. I mean,
Okay.
obviously it can be sent around after it's,
Sure.
I believe it goes to administration.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
And it's a memo from our superintendent, from the state superintendent.
Any other questions? If you joined us after the beginning, could you please make sure that you put your name, your organization, and the county that you represent in the chat? I do see a hand up, Sarah.
Thank you. So within our county, we have struggled the last 4 years to get the survey done. So 2020 obviously didn't happen. 2022, we got mixed messaging. Only one school district took the survey. So obviously we at Catholic Charities, so I also do youth. So I do prevention. I work with the Livingston County Community Alliance, and we use countywide data, so we don't selectively pick out schools. So, but this current year, all of our school districts have opted out of the survey because of one question and the demographics. And are you guys at the state level looking at that question, have heard feedback from other counties that with that question? And are like, I guess there's so many things because we want to get this data using the MiPHY, but we know that we could try alternate avenues, creating our own survey, stuff like that. But we love the MiPHY and getting all the information
Yeah.
countywide, but
Yeah,
sorry, that was a
so-
long-winded question.
No, it's okay. And it's a question you're not the only one asking this question. So she's referring to the transgender question. There is a question on the MiPHY that is new in the last 2 or 1 cycle. I'm going to forget when we put it on because it's been on the YRBS for a while. And typically we follow the YRBS. And so it is on the MiPHY and it is in the demographic section. And I have gotten feedback that certain districts and buildings do not want to participate because that question is on the survey. And we have had so the 2022 cycle is when I got the most feedback. So this most recent cycle where areas have chosen not to participate because of this one question. I'm also getting feedback saying, thank you so much for putting that question on the survey in the demographics where it belongs. So it's really hard to know what to do. I said before that we created the MiPHY Basic because we didn't want areas not to participate. And that's where I'm struggling with this one too. So we put it in the demographics section because that's where the question goes, but the demographics section can't be optional. So there's been talk about moving the question to the sexual behavior section so that it can be an optional question, but a decision has not been made. And I think we'll struggle with that up until the very end of the summer before we finalize the survey as to what we want to do, because as I said, we've heard feedback from some that one question means that they're not going to participate. And I've heard feedback from others that are glad it's there. So it's tough.
Barry did put a reminder in the chat. Are there any more questions?
That's like a really good reminder, Barry. And that's typically what I say to people when they tell me that, they're not going to participate because of that question, because of the transgender question, but that doesn't ever seem to be a good option for them. So.
Okay. Right. Any other Barry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up because that is a question that we are having as well. The other one thing I've heard is I had a school say to me, we're only doing MiPHY Basic because we don't want to ask the question about suicide. And because at that time, they won't have the supports. And I had to discuss with Amy Wasserman, and her and I came up with a solution to deal with that issue, basically has some resources available that time, as well as a resource number on the board as well. So think of that when you're thinking of these questions. If people say, I don't want that question, we'll say, number one, they can skip every question. And number two is that you can have resources there and a resource number to remind people if they need these resources available. So, because I know a lot of people don't want to do the survey, and I get it. I understand it. And I understand, and I understand parents' rights. I get that 100%. And I get where they're coming from. But we also have to remember that this data is data that helps them determine what their programming should look like. How can you have mental health questions and get 31? So this is the question I have, maybe not for you, Nicole, just in generality. There's a lot of 31N money going out, okay? Where's the accountability to showing that we're having this change in this mental health if we're not doing the MiPHY? How are we looking at that? You can look at suspensions all you want. I get that in tier 1, tier 2, 3, you know what I'm saying? However, though, if you don't have the perceptions of students, then really, how do you know if you're really making a change with this money? So that's just my caveat to that as well. So.
Okay, thank you. So any other questions? Want to make sure we're not skipping over anyone. Thank you so much, Nicole, for the information. We appreciate that. Going on, just a brief introduction of Barry Smith, who is the Regional School Health Coordinator, and he is the immediate past chair of MCRUD, and he is going to share with you a document that he created. Barry?
Mike, do you have that document? I was looking for it, and you know how you want to look for something, you can't find it?
Yes, I'll pull it up and drop it in the chat, but go ahead and explain it.
Okay, so I took another state, Ohio, And they basically have why this is an important document as far as a survey. Why is this an important survey? And looked at what kind of things are available to be able to be used in that survey, what the benefits are to that survey, and who else can benefit from that survey, not just schools, because schools, I think, sometimes put themselves in a pigeonhole if they don't realize that there are other entities that can actually work with them. I remember years ago, it was Eaton County that took the MiPHY survey and used it with their school districts at $1.5 million for services that would not have been available because grant money has to have data. So with that file, if you want to share it, Mike, you can as well. There has been some adjustments to it, maybe since you got it. So maybe that's why the one I can't find. There's one spelling error and we added some people. Thank you, Mike. But this is kind of the one. Can you make it larger for us visually challenged people, such as me? So it gives you an idea. And Nicole, there's any discrepancies here, let me know. I was using the Ohio model as a way to look at it. I am a graphic person to design this, so I didn't design this. I let her go with her creativity. I do have the MiPHY logo up there to make sure that we're on sign there. I didn't ask permission, so sorry. But I figured it'd be okay. But it's an online survey. You can see it's anonymous. By the way, all three of these pages are the same. There's just different color sets, and you can use them any way you like. But you can see on the left-hand side there, can you go, yep, stay right there, Mike, for the moment. You can see it's condemned. It's not annually. It's actually been changed to biannually. That's been changed. So I apologize for that change. There is a passive parental consent form. So a parent doesn't say, no, I don't want my child to do this. They just automatically are going to be doing this unless they say, I don't want my child doing this. And a lot of people will say, I want to see the survey. Great, you can see the survey. You need to come to my office to look at the survey. Because with our generation of copy and pasting, people can take those survey questions and tweak them and change them and all those little things that can have all sorts of other things around that. It is districts, and as Nicole said, we only get access as coalition people to the county level data. And whatever relationship you have with your district determines what level of access they provide to you. When I was in my district, at my coalition at that time, I had access to more data because I had a good relationship with that school district. That doesn't always happen, but you will have available data that is available at county level. And how many is it that you need, Nicole, to have a county level? Is it 2 districts?
2 districts and 2 building types. And so 2 high schools, 2 middle schools participating.
So as you can see, good back up to the top, Mike, on that, please. Thank you. As you can see, it's about demographics. There's bullying, there's school climate, school success, all the things, but for coalition people is alcohol, tobacco, vapor, marijuana, prescription, illicit drugs. It's about the norms. It's about community norms. It's about school norms. It's about individual norms. And there are sex-related questions. Remember, every question is optional. So I don't have to answer that question about transgender. Okay. It's in there. I get that. But if a parent says, don't answer that question, they don't have to. Okay. That is an option. And that's the one thing about that I think that people forget about. And I forgot about it until somebody made me aware of it as well. And, schools, and tell me if I'm wrong, Nicole, but most schools get this data. They don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So we actually in our school districts, I should say, I'm actually offering this as an option that we can help them to use this data as well. So here's ways that they can use this data that you can see. You can use it for planning. Planning is imperative, especially with all the money that's funneling right now. You have to have a plan. And my 6P for planning, I learned a long time ago, is piss poor planning implies piss poor performance. You really need to have good plans. Partnering. Everybody that's on this call, I want to ask you a question. Do you know who your school health coordinator is, your regional one? Every county in the state has one. If you don't know who it is, go to the Michigan School Health Coordinators Association website, and there's a listing of who has what counties. And if you need a connection with them, send me an email and I will introduce you to them. I'm only a year in, but I know them. We've had some changes, but I can let you know who these people are regarding those things. Then it looks at implementation. We're all doing these things. Universal Selected have indicated they're required for prevention, right? Everybody agree with that? Safety and violence. It's required. They have to have some safety and violence stuff in their plans, correct? For school safety in some capacity, right, Nicole? Have to have something, right? I know there's probably more than just something, but you get where I'm going with this. It can be utilized for that. So if you go up to just a little bit up, Mike, so we can look at what they're used for. Other way, wrong up. Here we go. You can see here, these are all the organizations. Faith-based has been added to mine as well. Have you connected with these other organizations and said to them, hey, we're contacting the school. Can you contact the school too? Because you need this data. Local law enforcement, they need the data. Hospitals are required to do a survey every 2 years to maintain their nonprofit status. Yeah, they have their own survey, but imagine if they had a survey that's already done with youth, that saves them money. This survey is free. There's no cost to anybody to do it. There's no cost to even put it together in the analytics of it. That's all done for us, okay? But human service organizations, a lot of us have human services collaborative councils in some respects. Use them, get them to sign on a letter or something stating those things as well, how important that is. It should say Mid-State, that's a typo. Mid-State Health Network, that's our PHIP. Who's your PHIP? Have you had them send in something to them saying, hey, my organizations need this data. They're in your schools. They might not become in your schools. I can't prove that they need to be there. There's a lot of school health related centers in different schools. They're required to have some sort of data. I know we have one in Stanish starting, one in Pinconning, and Gray and some other ones. They need that data. So they will be doing it without a problem because they know they need it. They have that buy-in. Look at, there's other coalitions that you have in your communities. Think about FAN too, Families Against Narcotics. People don't think about different organizations. They can use this data too. So everybody can use this data. So use them as a leverage point, in my opinion, to help them to realize how important this is. Because if you're just doing it, it's one person talking. But if you have 10 people saying the same messaging and saying how important this is and how you can use this data to work together, that's why I created this document. I will open it up to any questions or comments.
I just have one thing real quick, it is grade 7, 9, and 11. I believe it says.
Nope,
7,
I know
9.
that's been fixed on there.
Okay,
too.
good.
Thank you.
Good.
I appreciate that. Yes, somebody
Hey,
caught
Barry?
that. Oh yeah.
When you get a chance, send me the corrected version and I'll
Yep.
make sure people get it.
I got to make sure it's corrected, all the corrections, because I was going on break and I'm like, well, I'll get back to it. So.
Well, thanks for sharing this. Any questions for Barry before I go to a couple polls? If you have them, certainly put them in chat. But we'll get that out once we get it from Barry. But just a little poll about MiPHY participation. So it looks like we're coming into a MiPHY year. So now is the time to be doing that outreach to your schools. But I guess historically, or 1 being terrible participation, 5 is excellent. Just take a few minutes to. Oh, I haven't launched it, have I? Is it up there?
No, it's not up there.
There
we
we
go.
Just take a quick second to fill that out, please. How well is your schools participating in the MiPHY from 1 to 5? and Sarah kind of already kind of prefaced this, but this is how we came to have this meeting was, I've had a few conversations with Sarah over the last couple of years about the problems and challenges. We thought, hey, why don't we try to do some peer-to-peer stuff to see if we can learn some different things from each other. But take a few minutes if you have a school, there are a few seconds. Looks like most of you have probably participated, and the ones that haven't maybe aren't connected to schools in that way is my guess. But all right, let me end this poll and share results. Here we go. So are the results up there?
Yes.
Okay, so we got 4 terrible, 4 2 gives it a 2, 5 a 3. All right, we got to hear from I want to hear from the excellent, the one excellent. So we're going to put you on the spot. We want to hear how you define some of these numbers, but if you're okay, whoever put the 5, we'd love to hear from that.
So Mike, that was me. I up in Huron County. So, and I think a lot of the good response I get from my schools participating, we're very rural, and I only have 7 districts here. So, and I have an excellent relationship with them. So I think that in itself is huge. I do have a big fear though, moving forward with some of the new questions, because I did have the last cycle, I did have a parent in a school contact me because of some questions that were on there. And I think, I don't exactly know the question for sure, but it had to do with sexual orientation or whatever. So, and a 7th grader had taken it, and that sparked some interest with this, of course, his parent, and then into the school. So I'm a little hesitant moving forward with some of these new questions, but so far my history with the survey and participation has been really well.
We have 7 districts. Is that most of the districts then, or how many districts participate?
That's all I have in Huron County, 7 districts, and they all participate.
Okay, okay, so we got 100% participation. That's awesome. So I think you touched on it, but how did you say, we've got a good relationship with the schools, but how have you built that? Or can you talk a little bit more about that?
I can't take all the credit. Some of it has been built prior to me stepping into this position, which is probably about 5 years ago-ish anyways. So there was already some good relationship there. I think I was just able to build on that and make it grow and catch the ones that were not participating or not as regular with the MiPHY cycle. So I don't know, it wasn't super hard, and I hate to say that, I don't want to even jinx myself, but because like I said, moving forward, I'm afraid of, but the schools reach out then also for the results also. Most of them, not all of them, most of them have been reaching out. So I just remind them, it helps with grant writing and helps with programming and all that stuff we talked about, right? So.
One more question that I know Barry's got his hand up too, but so going into the MiPHY year, will you be doing some things, or maybe you've already done it, but now that the MiPHY cycle is coming around again, do you have to do some engagement with the schools, or any plans for that?
I will do what I typically do. I have the certain folks that I reach out to. And again, it helps with the connections I have. It's either those teachers I've been in contact with, or the principal level are the ones also. But if there's a new principal by chance, which I've had that in the past, of course happen. I always have a good relationship with the teacher. That's typically the health teacher or somebody assigned to maybe help coordinate this as well. So again, I've been just maybe pure luck, I don't know, but with the connections, but and there already been some buy-in, or once they've gotten it, they've been able to keep it. So.
Well, that's great. So you inherit some good relationships, but it still takes some work to maintain them. It looks like you have.
Absolutely.
So keep up the good work. But Barry, and then we'll go to Anthony.
Yeah, I heard her say she had some champions. That's important when you're doing this. You have to have some champions that really buy into this. The other question I wanted to ask at the poll as well is raising your hand. How many of you, besides you, have another organization that is actually telling schools how important this is? Besides you as a coalition, is there anybody has any other organizations, Chamber of Commerce or any other organizations that go to the school and say, hey, this is important, that's why we should do that? Anybody have that? We got one. Okay.
Yeah, I agree, Barry. Get some other messengers sending that message too. And about the champions, I believe every school has those champions. Every community has those champions for whatever the issue is that you're working on. It's just, finding them is all. But Anthony,
Thanks. Hey Shelley, how do you normally report some of those findings from the survey? Because it seems like your schools are interested to hear about some of the results. How do you report those findings back to them?
So if you're familiar with the MiPHY system, it's very difficult, right? As far as but I will, depending on the school, again, not all of them ask, but if they do ask for any of their information, I will go ahead and pull those reports for them, the county, a county-wide, or show them how to pull their own district level reports. And then based on, depending on what they want, if it's just specific to substance use or if it's all, whatever, I just help guide them so then they can pull what they need off of that system.
Cool. Because we created like a key findings report, and I'll put this in the chat so people could see, but it just kind of details all of the survey questions and everything. Well, not necessarily survey questions, but more so the results and some of the key things that we look at when we're obviously doing the grant writing, prevention work, things of that nature. But, like we've all been probably experiencing, and we've already mentioned, just pushback from both parents that are attending these board meetings, school board meetings, and schools themselves not wanting to participate, maybe not really wanting to know. Is also something as well. So just like we created this key findings report, and we share this on behalf to schools, but just not garnering as much of a participation as we would like.
for those of you that put a 2 or a 3 as far as participation, does anybody want to talk a little bit about why they chose 2 or a 3? Be great to hear some other folks.
I'll speak. I'm Jody from NMRE PIHP. And what we do is we have an incentive out of our liquor tax. We give the schools $500 each class, each grade to participate. And so we reimburse them that they can get $1,500. It's not a lot, but it's something, and it's something we've been doing for a long time. And I was looking at some numbers though, and we still don't have great numbers. And even though we offer that incentive, and all of our prevention staff that will go into the school and help them do it. Like they'll plan it, they'll be there, they can take over the class, and if there's any questions, get them set up on the computer. But this is another year, so we just almost got approved for that round of incentives. Next week we'll know for sure. And I think we're gonna try to hit the ground really running this year because of the COVID, and we really need that data, and it's the only thing we got. So
Well, keep up the good fight, Jody. And yes, I've heard some people do offer incentives, so maybe that will help. And also, by a show of hands, do any of the other local coalitions either offer incentives or assist in the implementation of the MiPHY at all? Lisa, Karen, I think. What is it you do, Karen?
We're not currently doing this, but we're tossing around the idea of providing some sort of incentive, as well as training volunteers who would go in to help proctor or facilitate the survey process. We're desperate in trying to get participation in any way that we can. So we're open to ideas. I'm taking a lot of notes of what other communities are doing. What's interesting is historically, we've really had great relationships and pretty good participation. But now even a couple of schools who had verbalized their willingness to do it, when we met with the superintendent and all of them together, that changed. So that group think, unfortunately, is a lot of pressure. So I did love the idea. So the liquor tax money, possibly as a way for incentive, I'll get with our local PIHP and see what might be available there. Different organizations, but we need it. We all need it. You're all in the same boat, which is wonderful that we have this opportunity to kind of do the peer-to-peer. But when I go back through my records, I've been appealing to our local school district since the 90s. I found sample letters, sample presentations, different things. And I feel like we're back to square zero, unfortunately.
Lisa, anything you want, what does your coalition do down there, downriver?
So we have not incentivized the schools with money or anything like that, but that's a great idea. But we do proctor and offer to proctor the survey, and we've had one school district over the last several times contact me right at the beginning of the school year so they can get dates set with our staff so that they don't have to worry about, having people do it, and they know we're going to come in and take care of it. So that's been really helpful with a couple of the schools, but other schools not necessarily as helpful. So, but we're like everybody else, we keep pushing and pushing and pushing and begging and encouraging and begging, whatever.
Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else want to explain kind of the numbers they chose? And I see that Paige says that a school district uses another survey that they run instead of MiPHY, but they keep the results internal and don't share it. And then Aaron's asking, does anyone present to their school board to see if they can get that backing? Any school board involvement with folks out there? Or how do you just go to the principals or the superintendent? What do most people do?
I only ask because I'm thinking we've had these conversations in our coalition as well, like superintendents are so high level and sometimes they're not, they're a little bit more removed, from the day-to-day at the schools. But I know, like, at least in my district where I live in Oakland County, our school board is all parents, and so it was a thought that I had, has anyone ever thought to, get a short presentation slot and present, like, Barry, your sheet is great, like just an overview kind of the benefits, if anyone's ever done that, if that would be worth doing or if it's fruitless.
I know in the past, we had representatives from our local community coalition go into or get on the agenda of one of the school board meetings. And it was really successful because oftentimes the superintendent doesn't necessarily share the information with the school board members. And in the pecking order, the school board actually has the authority over the superintendent. So we were really successful in doing that. And just a little tip that always helps, we brought youth to the meeting to help with that presentation. So that I think it's always a little harder to say no to kids who are taking that time and going out and asking for things. So Aaron, I would highly encourage it, and to me, we can just keep on begging and asking and just hope we can get in front of the right group that has the right power and we'll get behind it.
Thank you. That is such a good idea. I love it.
Rachel, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we normally had gone to like our principals and just kind of asked them to participate, but we recently formed like a really good relationship with our superintendent of the whole RASD for our county. So that has been like, that's going to be a big game changer for us, because to have him as leverage, I mean, it sounds bad to, go, for lack of better words, go behind someone's boss to get what you need. But if that's what you need, then, and kind of how we've all been saying, is leveraging the importance of what this survey can show. I mean, for them to be able to use that data to leverage funding or additional resources is big. So if you can, start big, why not?
Thanks, Rachel. Let's see. Any other comments about, talking made me think of, I'm in the midst of cleaning my office has been going on for a couple years. But periodically I work on organizing my office, and I'm a pack rat, so I keep everything. But I came across, this is at least over 15, maybe probably 20 years now at this point. But they used to be really, the state was invested in, or the region was invested in student assistance programs. And I came across an event we had done, a key leader luncheon, and we invited I think it was mainly superintendents, but it might have been school principals as well. But I know it was targeting kind of superintendents, and it was about pitching the merits of, I think, a student assistance program at the time. So I don't know if that's something that might be done in terms of MiPHY, but we provided a little lunch and a presentation and tried to keep it kind of, I think it was really early in the morning before the school day, but it helped us with our student assistance program at the time, I know. So lunch and food and getting to know people, does a lot, it seems like. But Barry.
Yeah, we had an opportunity our last MiPHY cycle to actually get on the superintendent's agenda, curriculum agenda. So we did all those things. But what you have to realize a lot of times is sometimes they have their mind made up. And that's where you got to start early and get them ready. That level of readiness, we know about prevention. The same thing goes with this survey. Where are they at in their level of readiness, and what do you need to do to get them to move along that continuum? And the only other thing I'll say is be careful of going to the board instead of the supers, because supers can then say, we don't want you in our buildings. You may think that's not going to happen, but I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you supersede them, they may take that as an attack on them, and they say, well, you know what? You're just not going to go in the buildings anymore. And the principals will just have to obey whatever they're going to do. Just a cautionary tale. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying know the unintended consequences that can happen. Because of prevention, we don't always do that, right? We just want to remember those unintended consequences.
Well, I agree entirely. There is a little bit of a risk of kind of going around somebody. And so, I was just thinking about that on another issue right now. It's like, I'm pretty patient by nature, I think. And so I'll be really patient. We'll ask really nicely, but sometimes if it's not getting it done, then you got to change up your tactics a little bit. And then now I'm thinking about, again, another issue. How can we exert some pressure on this person? Because I'm not sure we're on the same page anymore. So good point, Barry. Any other last comments? I want to go to one more quick poll about whether we should do this again, perhaps, and then I'll do a quick MCRUD commercial too, but any other comments or thoughts before we wrap it up here? I am going to, well, let me see, pull up this other poll. So again, having trouble. I keep clicking on the poll, but let me share this and stop. Well, oh, there we go. There we go. It took a little while. Sorry.
I actually do have a question, and this is probably
Sure.
geared towards Nicole.
Sure.
So I know that the MiPHY is not as pushed, and we had YRBS offered to 2 of our districts this past year, and they turned it down because of the questions. Is there any way, and I really hate to say using force or like requiring schools to take the surveys? Is there any discussion on that, or talking about that? And because I know we don't want to force schools to take a survey. I mean, we don't force people to always take surveys, but is there anything where we can do that, or the state's talking at that level?
So, yeah, so especially in regard to YRBS, there are states in the country that do require YRBS, but that is a state level decision. So Michigan's not there. There isn't currently anything going to get there. There's definitely talk because of the struggles. So Michigan historically has been one of the highest participating YRBS states for many, many, many years. We've had weighted data since 97, and there's only one other state that's had data that long. So Michigan's had a lot of really great success with that survey, but the last 2 cycles has been very low. And so there's talk at the state at MDE about what it might take to require the YRBS. MiPHY typically gets thrown in there when we talk about things like that, but we also, especially with MiPHY, have always had the mindset of we want to provide this for the local level, you know, and we have always been very, very protective of it because especially when we were first creating MiPHY a long time ago, there was a real fear from districts that we were going to be using their data against them. And so we've always really been very protective of that because we didn't want that preventing participation. Now it's a totally different reasons people aren't participating now, but so no, we aren't planning to have it required in the near future, but it's definitely something we're talking about to see if there is a possibility, but it's going to take a state level decision to make it happen.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, is that a legislative action or is that an MDE decision or?
It would probably be a legislative action.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. I just put a little thing in the chat. Looks like most of the people are in favor of doing this again, so maybe we try to do it again before the next, before MiPHY cycles kick off and discuss it, try and get it on people's radar. But I really appreciate everybody's participation today in the meeting. I hope it was helpful. We'll send out a follow-up email. We hope that you can join us on August 10th. We're having an Alcohol Policy Summit in Charlotte, Michigan, our first in-person event. And so we hope to see you there. And then also on Zoom, our next MCRUD general meeting is Tuesday, August 15th, and the link is there. So thanks, everybody. Everybody have a nice rest of your week, day, and I'm sure I'll see some of you soon. Bye-bye.